Welcome to Subject to Change, a sustainability podcast hosted by Jody and Lauren.
We're building around people, Jody. You said it, right?
Yeah.
Like we are here to build buildings for people, and that should be first and foremost in our efforts.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no, it's good to do something other than everything else I've been doing today.
Let's hear about current inspirations.
I actually worked at an organization once where, everybody was passionate about, it was another educational institution. Everybody was passionate about what we were doing, but we all wanted change so much that my boss always said, the very best people are the people who are always like 1 second away from quitting, right? Yeah. Like they're just sitting there, like trying to get stuff done. It's just like, the system is so slow. We need to change things, right? And like, as long as you can keep those people and rein them just in so that they continue to like push forward on it, right? Those are the employees you want, right?
Well,
Jody, you're in the sweet spot.
Awesome. Oh my God, I am so valuable right now. 2 seconds from quitting at any given moment. Oh man. And the things that keep me going, seriously, Paul, are things like getting into, mass timber and working with you and Jim and Persis, and those kind of discussions are so incredibly important. So that's why I was excited that you were going to be talking with us for a bit.
I couldn't agree more. I teach my classes right out of the gate. So I have classes at 8:30 and 9:30 in the morning. And that like sets the tone for the whole day. Like I come in, like I'm with the students right there, right? And then the rest of the day, I'm just dragging through all of my inbox and paperwork to try to get to the point again where I can do the stuff that I want to engage in. So,
so wait, that's a great question. What's the stuff you want to engage in? What are you wanting to engage in right now?
So I will try to keep it specific to a little bit of what I'm doing, and then I'll step back, if you will. Okay. And so, so if you were, I finished high school and I was casting about, right? The route was everybody's supposed to go to college and this was the next step. And that's what my brothers had done. And I was like, So I worked for 3 years and I worked in construction, and it was a time for me to kind of get my head wrapped around things straight. What did I want to do? And during that process, one of the contractors I worked for essentially fixed the problems in buildings. So he was mostly a renovation contractor, and we went in and did exactly that. And I realized the passion I had I got great pleasure out of fixing things, but also engaging in work where I felt like we were creating something for the good of the people who were going to be able to use it, right? That my work was connected to, in the end, a family was going to be happier and more comfortable. A new arrival in the family was going to have a space to be in, right? A family that had needed to bring in an older relative was going to be able to do that in their home. I loved the customer part of it, right? And I just went off to college, studied, pretty much found out that nobody does that, right? You got to build big, expensive commercial buildings to make any money. And you want to be as disconnected from the client as you possibly can be, right? Just like as little as possible to just like do your work on the construction side. So I've gravitated toward kind of finding the connection between enjoying being involved in the construction industry, the building industry, which is something I deeply enjoy, but maintaining that connection to the people ultimately, right? The people and the impact that the people are going to have.
Paul's current project.
Currently, part of the way I'm realizing that is I'm at an institution that's looking for solutions to the current climate crisis. And we are trying to understand what resources can we bring to bear, and particularly what resources can we bring to bear for some of the most challenging problems. And so my current project is built around using resources from New York forests, so bio-based resources, and creating systems, this is panelized systems, that we can use to improve the envelope performance of our existing buildings.
Oh my God, wait.
Yeah, no, this is you. This is
okay. So we're going to have like an well, we can do it on here.
Yeah, whatever you want.
But and we need a product like what you're about to explain. So we need to connect.
Which is excellent.
Keep going.
Well, no, I love to hear that, Lauren, because, one of the things that is kind of driving me, right? You said, like, what is it that I really want to do? There's, it's great to build new, and I love doing that. There's a lot of buildings that just need to be fixed, right? That could be improved, and we can make a difference. And that's where it's going to have to happen, right? For us to really have an impact on the dial for our future energy use on the building side. And so the system we're proposing essentially is saying, can we do this? And traditionally there are approaches, and most of them are based on using petrochemical foam as the functional insulation in the unit. So what we're looking at is, how can we do this? And in the process, how can we use a product that actually doesn't have a negative embodied carbon impact, but actually is to store carbon? And so there's products in the market in Europe today. We're not using them in the US. There's companies that want to build these in the US. So we're putting together panels, basically 4-foot by 16-foot panels. And so we started building these in the lab. They're composite assemblies using existing wood resources from New York State, along with some wood insulation that's being produced in Europe, but will be produced in the Northeast.
Building an ecosystem.
We're trying to essentially put together an ecosystem, right? So I'm down in the lab, we're working with the students, we're making sure all the building science is solid, right? It's material that could potentially biodegrade, right? This stuff has to be solidly detailed, solidly composed, solidly thought through. So we're focused on making sure we do that right. But to make it happen and to be able to support a company like yours, Lauren, Chris's, right? This has got to be something where everybody knows how to stick frame a building, right? We've got to, every contractor should know how to renovate using a panelized system for an existing building, right? This should be the bread and butter of a whole group of people. And so we're trying to do that. We're first working on the product, but we're looking potentially at what are all the pieces that need to come together.
The opportunity in existing structures. Part of what Lauren's exploring is infill. Part of it is informing future renovation work, correct?
Yeah.
In that part of the city? And it's urban.
There will be some, yeah, there will be some. It's just not on our first three.
So, and it's urban. So if there's an ability to test panels in an urban environment, especially related to fire code concerns, which I know comes up in the city with wood paneling, that would be really cool.
Yeah.
And then, so those are two pieces. I'm really fascinated by the wood insulation because I was looking into that, and I'm so glad that you're focusing there. That's exciting, really exciting. Not only are existing buildings, the fodder for the future, but that we have to do them well. We have to really renovate them well.
Well, it's like my business name, right? Like the whole focus of my business is Rehabitat. And while I really struggled for a little bit with this idea of building new versus restoration of something existing. But what I really came down to was, if it's infill and if it's infill as it is bad, especially if I'm going to passive house levels.
Yeah. Carbon progressive.
But to Paul's point, one of the drawbacks, because I've been looking at panelized systems, is that they're all of the insulation is. So I want to be, as carbon progressive as I can possibly be.
Ooh, I like that term, carbon progressive. That's better than carbon neutral or carbon positive, which is confusing as hell.
Yeah.
Carbon progressive.
Yeah. Where does the compromise end?
Right. And how many people don't realize that every new building is going to be adding carbon into the atmosphere in some way?
Yeah.
I mean, at this point in time, I don't believe there is a building that could truly be carbon neutral as far as materials, transportation to site, and operations. At least we're aware that's the goal, but we're not there yet.
So you're always buying an offset, basically.
Yeah.
To get to trailer.
Understanding the trade-offs.
this is exactly just where we need to be, right? With what we're at today, we need to push as hard as we can on all of these and the decisions that we make. There's still an industry, right? There will be new buildings built, right? Whether regardless. And so I think helping us understand and how to make these decisions the way we really should in a reasoned fashion is exactly the focus that we need to maintain. And so, sharing your experience, sharing your observations, sharing kind of, this was the pain point here. This is how I got to this point. This is where the key split occurred. I think that's the story we want to tell.
The benefits of working cross-curriculum.
So like how many different departments are you working with on this?
Yeah, so this is part of a bigger approach that we pitched to the college, and it was called the Discovery Challenge. So there's a lot for us to discover. Within that, we've got the forestry team. We've got folks who are working with LCA and doing the LCA analysis for the work. Specifically, I'm on the product development part of the work. And we also have, if you will, a social side of this. So the current project is just these panels, but mass timber in general sort of implies a deeper thinking about the way we house people and what people want around them, including considerations of biophilia and considerations of one's understanding of our relationship with using wood, period, and our understanding of the fire risks associated with any type of wood construction.
Respecting how nature forests.
We want to make sure they understand what a sustainably managed forest would look like and what nature would do with a forest, right? There would be loss in nature. There would be over time, right? The forest characteristics would change. What are we doing that essentially mimics that approach if we try to sustainably manage the forest? So we're looking in those three areas. First, at the very specifics of the forestry and carbon accounting, LCA, product development, and then stepping back a little bit, if you will, and looking at some of the broader societal implications.
I really appreciate what you said about relating this to how a forest would manage itself, because I think a lot of people still, and maybe this was a fault of environmentalism in the 60s and 70s, think that we have to protect nature and keep it separate from people in order to preserve it. The whole preservationist kind of mantra is quite different than working with nature and working with nature following her own rules, right? So I think mass timber, what excites me about mass timber is some of the things you've touched on. Not only is there a way to create a market and a kind of a closed loop system of managing forests, but there's an ability to do that in a way that aligns with how nature would manage a forest herself, and to reconnect human beings to nature through biophilia, which is something that I don't think we've studied near enough. That's the thing that excites me most is understanding divorcing ourselves from nature has created a lot of stress that we haven't tabulated yet.
No, I agree, Jody. This is absolutely fascinating, right? Intrinsically, what is it that we want to surround ourselves with? And it's easy to say, I want to surround myself with this or that in a consumerist society, but there's actually very deep, right inside of us, there's very deep longings we have about what we want to surround ourselves with, including for some family, including for, right? But, physically, what do we want to surround ourselves with? I just don't think we know a lot about it, right? I just don't think we know enough. And so I agree. I'm absolutely fascinated. I wish I could figure out how to learn more about it, but I think, what we're doing in terms of mass timber hopefully gives people the opportunity to ask themselves that and say, is this what I want to look at when I get up in the morning? Is this what I want to walk on? Is this what I want to run my hands over, right? Are these the types of things that I want to surround myself with?
Building trust. I think that the three of us are all kind of forward thinking in this same way or in similar ways. This is a very bold question, and I don't mean to put you on the spot. We can edit it out if it's on the spot, but what resistance have you encountered, if any, and what have you found successful in addressing that resistance to move forward?
I think one of the most important things I do for the students in terms of developing a dialogue is simply I'm very open and honest about kind of who I am up front, right?
Cool.
I had a hard time finding a parking space and so did they, right? You know what I mean? Like there is just already something about who I am that they know is very helpful in then not later being able to be just dismissively classified as being part of a group that that person sees as, you know, not their tribe.
When the curricula is secondary.
This is what I've come to realize, probably only the last 4 or 5 years, how much soft skills are important in change management and in introducing new ideas and in making projects as beneficial as possible. And I guess my curiosity, Paul and Lauren, both since you teach, how are those soft skills being approached in college curriculums that are related to the design and construction industry?
I'm moving increasingly away from, I don't want to be in the front of the room with a slide presentation behind me, clicking, and having people falling asleep. For me, I'm to the point now where I like to throw people into teams or have more of a dialogue in the classroom, because I feel like they need to be able to react quickly. They need to be able to have conversations with people. And, you know, it's like, look in the face, pay attention to what's happening, and like, let's actually have a dialogue. Let's make sure you understand this. That's the approach I'm taking now. Paul, maybe you have a completely different way of skill teaching.
I'll jump in. No, Lauren, I think absolutely everything you're doing is spot on.
Yeah.
I'll just share that to step back, Jody, I honestly think the question you're asking is the question that's going to determine the success or failure of higher education. Because if you come to me for a bunch of information that I'm delivering to you, right? If you want to know how to test concrete or you want to know how to detail steel, right? Those days of me being a repository for that and being able to be kind of the go-to person for that information, those days are over, right? There are better YouTube videos, there are better experiences that you can have that can capture all of that. So what is it really that a student needs? When they're 18 to start a career at 22, they need to go through a process, and that process is really personal development more than anything. And I think they can help them with professional personal development. And so what we do and what I'm doing is exactly what Lauren describes. Essentially, the curricula itself is secondary to making sure that the student, in working through that curricula, is developing the master habits, right, of a master craftsman for their craft.
It's all about group work.
Lauren mentioned, you know, this group projects, and I think that's key. We're using a software called CatMe, which actually all the students self-identify characteristics. So what's your GPA? What type of person are you? Are you detail-oriented? Are you big picture? What type of leadership do you like? Do you like being told what to do? Do you like working independently? So I self-identify, and then the software identifies and creates diverse groups, right? And what I do with the students is, this is not a this is not a blind process for this. So I tell them, I'm going to use this software to develop the groups for this team, and these are the ways that we're going to put the groups together. Are you going to have someone who was an academic low performer in your group? Absolutely. Are you going to have someone who is an academic high performer in your group? Absolutely. Are you going to have someone who's detail oriented? You bet you are. Are you going to have someone who's big picture? Certainly. And so I think to the degree that we can do exactly what Lauren's trying to do is, right, create these situations where they're forced to develop the skills that will bode well for their success professionally, right? Working with all different types of people, all different types of team, all different types of motivation. And, you know, on top of it, it does a bunch of other really cool stuff. The students put in their schedules and it automatically tells them when everyone's available for group meetings, right? Which is like complaint number one with the students, right? Like, we have time we can meet together, right? I want you to meet together. I want you to all be, right? So we do that. We sort of throw them into, the communications platforms and software. So our students are working in Procore, they're using Bluebeam, we're working
Nice.
Autodesk, BIM 360, they're working in environments where they're collaborating with these tools. And in doing that, Jody, honestly, my hope is that the overall experience the student receives is something that you wouldn't receive if you just watched course videos online.
Yeah.
Right, in your room, right? I think
That's fantastic.
we go to enormous expense to, create our classrooms, to bring our students from all over the world to this location, to bring them together in the classroom, right? Maintain disinfected, right? High ventilation, right? We're putting them all together. The worst thing we can do is to give them a product that they could have gotten without being together like that, right? To just do a one-way direction. So if I bring them together in the classroom, pretty much, I'm going to be spending as much time saying, Jody, what do you think about this? Lauren, how does that
Beautiful.
get to understand? I'm going to be interacting with the students because the students consistently tell me, right, they like being put on the spot. They, as much as we complain about students and they're not ready, they like responsibility. They like to be, you're going to be responsible for this. You're going to get up in front of your classmates and you're going to be the only one telling them about this. You're going to be the expert on this. I want you to be responsible. So I think to the degree that we can do that type of thing, I think we're adding a value that really there's just no way to replicate in a non-personal manner. And to me, it's just going to be the salvation of, higher education, if there is one, because this idea that people are going to open books and lecture to people, in this day and age is just, I think it's really dead.
And I think architecture, design, construction management, a really good place to learn those skills because it is inherently a team-based process. So, wow, fantastic.
Yeah,
I think the goal, and Paul, I know you can probably speak to this, the goal is to have your students be engaged.
Inspired.
I'm just really inspired, Paul, by what you said and how you're approaching education. That gives me hope that that more educators are looking at it that way, as opposed to defending what they know or being comfortable, like you said, in what they know and repeating what worked in the past, because the students are different, the environment is different, the challenges are different. So you can't do the same thing that you used to do.
So Paul, who's your hero?
So Paul, we always ask 2 questions.
Okay.
I'm going to take
dun, dun. They're really tough.
One of the questions is, who is your hero right now?
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to be able, well, they could follow them on social media if they wanted to, but just to kind of let you know where my priorities lie and my perspective, honestly, my heroes are my kids.
They could totally, but that would probably be weird for them.
Yeah.
So we won't. But go ahead
Yeah.
and tell us why, and we won't link them to
And
social
who they
media.
are.
Each one in their own way, but I really do see, I'm very encouraged by the youth we have today and what the future holds for them and the opportunity they have to engage with that future. And so every one of my kids, I've just, they are their own people and persons. My son, as soon as the pandemic started, decided he was going to become an EMT and a firefighter. My daughter decided that while the world around her didn't really recognize it, she was very happy without a cell phone all the way through high school. She got a cell phone in her senior year. Now that doesn't sound like a hero, right? A hero, like we're using the term hero, but it's someone who inspires me simply because they had their own understanding of what they felt the priorities should be. Those priorities aligned with my priorities, and they simply stuck with them, right? And what was going on around them didn't necessarily influence. She also, for the last 3 summers, has worked in an inner city pool in Syracuse, and essentially, there's a lot of kids there for whom that is their life all summer. They go to the pool, and they wouldn't have opportunities otherwise. And there's been times when, she's had to shelter them in the changing rooms because of drive-by gunfire.
Oh,
there's been, all kinds of crazy incidents. But it's a haven for the kids who come in many cases from homes where there's not a lot of other positive things maybe that they have opportunities to do during the summer. And she's, there's lots of lifeguarding jobs around. She could have worked at a lot of other places if she wanted to, but she's been very happy there. And my youngest as well. She's just, amazing in so many ways in the way she's forced her life, especially through high school and the decisions she made. So I'll tell you a few people that I do follow.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
And this for the building community folks. And so one of them is an individual who goes by the moniker of the Essential Craftsman.
Ooh.
And so essentially he's a contractor, is a mostly residential contractor, worked in the trades for many years, but just takes great joy in sharing the pride of craftsmanship. And not just his craftsmanship, he uses a technique of building a home essentially to hire people to do it, but shares what it is to be a craftsman. And so when I mentioned I worked for 3 years before I went to college, during those 3 years, I was fortunate enough to fall under the wing of someone who basically, for the first time in my life, taught me what it meant to really try to excel. And he helped me understand what it means to simply set a standard for yourself of where you want to work to and do that. So I think the Essential Craftsman, I see some of that same thing in the way he works. And he has interesting ones. If you're just going to jump into one, listen to the one on working by yourself. Okay. And it's a very interesting, what does it mean to work by yourself? What's going through your brain? What are you thinking about in terms of the balance between what your hands are doing and what your mind is doing during that time, trying to be efficient and at the same time sort of, putting yourself in a good place for the work.
And what can we all focus on to make change?
What I would like to see everyone do is find joy in a mode of transportation, maybe other than driving your car someplace. Okay, so just find enjoyment in whether it's walking, whether it's running, whether it's bicycling, whether it's driving your moped, whether it's driving your freeway. Just find something that brings back. So I guess there are people who like to drive. I find driving my vehicle or the commute, kind of the traditional commute, is not very enjoyable. And so I enjoy when I have the time to stop and I can find something else and find things. I kind of forget the joy I had when I was 6 and I could jump on my bike and I had the freedom of riding anywhere. That freedom's still there, right? I can still jump on my bike. I can still do that. I don't do it as much as I should. So when I get the chance to sort of stop and do things like that, I love riding my bike to maybe the gas station, right? Wherever I'm going. I like riding. So I would say, to the degree that we can in the daily tasks that we find that are, for whatever reason, onerous, remember a time in your life when you didn't feel that way and you didn't feel that way for some reason and reconnect with it, right?
That's great.
Yeah.
That intentionality, that again, paying attention to what's being done as opposed to getting it done.
Yes.
I love that.
I hope that makes sense. I don't know.
It does.
That
definitely.
makes a ton of sense. That's excellent.
Wrapping it up.
I so much appreciate your time.
No, thank you so much.
Paul.
Like I said, I've admired your work from afar for so long. I'm really very honored to be on here. And I think that, the way that we reach out to people has changed over the years. And I'm just really glad that you're doing it this way. I'm really glad that you're creating this opportunity for people. So thank you for those efforts.
If you think of or know anybody additional that you think would be good to come on in a format like this, we'd love to reach out to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will do some thinking on that.
Thank you.
All right. And thank your kids for being the exceptional people that inspire you.
I know. Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much. I hope you both have a great night.
Thanks for joining us for Subject to Change.
Yeah.
Take so good care.
Right.
Take care,
Bye.
Jody. Lauren.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Thanks.
Bye.